We're going to have a drawing right now, who goes first. There'll be 2 minutes. Not that I need these notes or anything, but there will be a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. And the opening statement will be the status of my campaign as of today. Then we'll have a series of questions. I'll start off with a few non-sandbag questions. And one candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. The other candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. If you watched the governor's debate last night, they gave him 60 and 30. Obviously, there's more content here than there was last night. And following that, we will have a closing statement in reverse order from the beginning, why I would be a better state treasurer than my opponent. Let's not have much of a booing and yelling and screaming. Let's learn about this race. And for the drawing, well, Mr. Frerichs, you came the farthest, so pick a number. Fair enough. And that's
number 2.
Tom, you're going to go first. 2 minutes. The status of your campaign as of today. Round of applause for Representative Cross.
Why don't we just stop now?
Thank you very much.
You know, I think we all have gotten to the point where we're a little embarrassed about the condition of the state, and I find myself, and I suspect all of you, whether you're in Illinois or you're on vacation or you're at work, and someone asks you where you're from, and you find yourself mumbling, and they say, oh, you're from Iowa. No, I didn't say Iowa. And they say, well, you're from what? You're from Indiana or Idaho? No, we're from Illinois. And they say, oh, poor you, and kind of laugh. And I guess we maybe long for the days when people were thinking about this state in the context of the mob and the days of Al Capone. But people in this state are embarrassed, they're frustrated, and they're angry about the condition of this state. And as you travel around the state, you hear that time and time again. And I think the frustration we have and the anger we have, whether it's you guys or whether it's us as candidates, is we don't need to be in the position we're in. Other states around us, specifically in the Midwest, went through some very tough times in the late 2000s and addressed their problems head on, and we didn't. And as a result, and most of us know the numbers, we have the worst credit rating, the worst pension system, high unemployment, unbalanced budgets, and the list goes on and on. I'm of the school of opinion and thought that we can fix this state. I don't think it's going to be an easy journey. I think it's a 5 to 10 year journey at best. It may take a little longer. Might be a little shorter depending on the overall national economy, but it's fixable. And I think that is important to remember. We sometimes, in the context of races, gets a little negative, but we can fix this place, and we need to focus on that. I happen to think the Treasurer's Office, while it has certain responsibilities, can and should be engaged in some of the problems of the day. And we'll go into those during, I assume, the question and answer session, but I think that things like making sure the budget is balanced as our Constitution requires, taking on fraud and corruption, being a lot more transparent on the factual problems of the day are important, and we're going to do that. Status of our campaign is good. The last 3 papers, the first 3 papers that have endorsed, the Daily Herald, the Quincy Herald-Whig, and the Northwest Herald endorsed us, all are liking the plan that we've articulated. Been endorsed by the mayor of Aurora, a hardcore Democrat, if you will. It was an Obama delegate, and also Alexi Giannoulis, who liked the idea of our plan and also thought we had a better understanding of the office. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to a good debate.
Very good. By the way, candidates, not that you can't notice it, but we have the City Club A with her stop sign there, so there you go. There are no small jobs. Mr. Frerichs, 2 minutes, the status of your campaign as of today.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you everyone for took time out of your mornings to come here this morning. My name is Mike Frerichs. I'm running for state treasurer. I'm proud of this state. I was born in this state, grew up in this state, and I think we can do better. I'm running for state treasurer because I think I'm the only candidate in this race who has experience in government finance. I'm a certified public finance officer. I was a Champaign County auditor. And every year we were in office, we received the Certificate for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. And I think you need someone with that experience to come in and reform this office, to clean up this office and bring accountability and transparency. So then we can focus on the real job of state treasurer, making smart investments. And I'm someone who's going to stand up for the middle class in this state. We're going to make greater investments here in the state of Illinois, because I believe we have some tough times right now, but we have brighter days ahead of us. And if we make greater investments in our entrepreneurs and our small businesses, we can help grow and diversify this economy. And if we do that, a lot of our other problems will go away. Well, thank you very much for having me here today, and look forward to your questions.
Okay, round of applause for State Senator Frerichs. Okay, first question goes to Mr. Cross, Representative Cross. You'll have 90 seconds to answer, and then you'll have 60 seconds to respond. And because this is the City Club and it's always primo veritas, truth be first, this question was sent to me by someone you probably know, one of our great religious leaders who always spends Christmas with us, Rich Miller. Rich will be here for his usual Christmas appearance and bringing joy and all the rest. Mr. Cross, one of the things that you have articulated, and you just almost articulated it now, is to try and figure out a way to block unbalanced budgets. And that is really obviously an important thing. As member of the legislature and a leader, why were you incapable of achieving that in the last several years?
Well, if the Speaker and the President of the Senate and the Governor had listened to our ideas, we would have balanced budgets at the moment. Unfortunately, they didn't. But one of the good things that the General Assembly's done over the last couple of years is we've started to do a better job of articulating or figuring out what available revenue we have. Unfortunately, look at the last couple of years. This year, for instance, the General Assembly passed a budget that spent $400 million more than we had available to spend. $10 million for a privately owned theater, pay raises for legislators, a brand new school in Speaker Madigan's district. We can't keep doing that. If we don't balance our budget, we can't get out of the hole. I think it's one of the linchpins of the recovery of this state. The treasurer is in a unique spot to understand how much money that he takes in or the state takes in, and most important of all, what he has to disperse. And if you were the treasurer and have taken an oath of office to uphold that office, knowing the Constitution requires a balanced budget, I believe you're in a position to have to say to the General Assembly, we don't have enough money because of the excessive spending you've done, and I'm not going to violate my oath of office. The treasurer is in a unique position of having standing, unlike a member of the General Assembly or a citizen at large, to take this on. If we don't balance the budget, our credit rating continues to be miserable. We paid $300 million in late fees and penalties last year. We have fewer people wanting to do state work. We have got to insist on a balanced budget, and I will do that. The goal is not to file a lawsuit. The goal is to make sure we have a balanced budget, and if I have to take the General Assembly to court as treasurer, I'll do that.
Okay. Senator Frerichs, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, we debated this in front of the Chicago Tribune editorial board, and as I pointed out, no lawyer I have talked to says the treasurer has any special standing to sue the General Assembly on the budget. And we asked for Tom to provide a legal opinion as to where that came from. You said it'd be forthcoming, and it hasn't come to the Tribune editorial board yet. But I think we can look at history. If you look at budgets, Chicago Tribune said about budgets you voted for. In just 3 years, Ryan and lawmakers burned through a budget surplus, bloated the state's per capita debt to help launch a $12 billion public works spree, boosted the payroll by tens of millions of dollars, and raided hundreds of millions of dollars from the main checking account to pay for legislative pork barrel projects. Revenues soared during that period, but spending soared even faster. So if you're serious about balancing budgets, then why would you support unbalanced budgets in the past? And the other question I asked was, Bruce Rauner has put forward a budget plan that has been widely criticized by economists, by journalists, by political scientists as being out of balance. Would you sue Bruce Rauner's budget? Would you call that budget out as being out of balance?
Well, this is the City Club, and we never let a blow go unanswered. Mr. Cross, you've got 60 seconds to respond to the response.
Let's hit a couple things right off the bat. First of all, Mike, this year's budget was outspent by $400 million. You supported it. As I said, for pay raises, $10 million for a pork barrel, for a theater in Chicago, privately owned. It was so obvious it was an unbalanced budget. I guess the question is, why would you vote for that? Second of all, how many people in this room can tell me, including you, Mike, what the revenue estimates are that Bruce Rauner has laid out, and what are the spending estimates he's laid out?
I'd say that's
60 seconds to respond to the
Well,
response.
the answer is...
That's an answer from a 22-year Springfield insider.
No, Mike.
Every
The reality is,
newspaper
the reality
and political
is,
scientists and
no,
economists
the reality is
understand.
there aren't any numbers because he's talked in broad strokes of what he wants to do. He hasn't laid out a budget because he's not the governor. We can't even put down our pension numbers yet because we won't have those until November, December. There are no numbers, so it's impossible. to do that.
Real
And
quick.
but let me be
That's a-
real
real-
clear.
real
Let
quick,
me be
that's-
real
I'll
clear.
say that's-
If in fact Bruce Rauner is the governor, and when he actually lays out a budget and it's passed and it's not balanced, you're darn right, I'll take him to court. It doesn't matter the party. You have to turn this state around. And one of the ways you do it is insisting on a balanced budget. Let's talk about today and the last year or two, not 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. If we're going to prove the state, we can't keep spending money we don't have.
Okay,
Well,
last time, 60 seconds.
I can tell you, I don't need Bruce Rauner to put out all the details. I don't need to look through all of this. What he's proposed in terms of increased spending and decrease in revenues will be an unbalanced budget. I'm not afraid to say that. No, you can't claim to be a watchdog for the state and then not be critical when your own party puts something out there that's unbalanced. That's being a lapdog.
By the way, so far this is a hell of a lot better than last night's debate, all right? I mean, forget all the other stuff. Thank
Mike,
you.
but wait a second. You didn't answer. Why did you vote for an unbalanced budget this fall or this spring? You didn't answer that question. You voted for a budget that was $400 million more than we had, and you haven't explained to the people of this state why you voted for it.
That budget is balanced. There are revenues to support it. It might require some borrowing, but would you answer the question, do you think that Bruce Rauner's plan has any chance of being balanced?
Well, when you say as a General Assembly you have $35.3 million to spend, and you spend 35.7, at least where I come from in Oswego, that's not balanced. It might be in the world of Champaign. Second of all, if Bruce Rauner, if a budget is passed when he's the governor of the state of Illinois that's not balanced, I'll say it again, yes, I'll take the same action.
All right, to close, no more on this issue. Mr. Frerichs, you have the last word.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll just say that it's clear, and it's not just me. You can look at editorial boards, you can look at political scientists, you can look at economists who have said his numbers just don't add up.
Okay.
I don't know why it's so difficult to admit that.
Okay. Moderator, move on to question
Yes.
number 2. This is for you, Mr. Frerichs. Again, this comes from the poison pen of Mr. Miller. Question about the issue that did make headlines about overseas funds, and that your position was that we should not invest overseas, and the only place allegedly we invest is in the state of Israel. Do you want to explain what you meant by saying no overseas investments?
Oh, I never said no overseas investments. I think our portfolio has to be diverse, it has to be safe. But what I have said, I think in terms of Israel bonds, there is no difference between Tom Cross and I. We both support those investments. We both have talked about the need to increase those investments. They are sound investments. But what I have said is we need to make greater investments here in the state of Illinois. And I think we can do that with our technology development accounts. We saw great success with this. When we invest in Illinois-based venture capital, they tend then to invest more in Illinois startup companies. Tom made reference to Champaign. I represent the University of Illinois. And there are great technology and ideas that come out of that university. And for too long, when those ideas have been commercialized, they have moved to California, they've moved to Massachusetts, they've moved to the coasts. We need to do a better job of keeping them here in the state and growing them here in the state. One, because they pay good wages, and that's going to help our state. Two, they help diversify our economy. So I've talked about making greater investments here in Illinois, doing better marketing with our linked deposit accounts to help things like Ag Invest, help our largest sector in this state, with Community Invest and Business Invest. Because if we invest more in our small businesses and our entrepreneurs, we're going to grow ourselves. And every dollar we can help grow for this state is a dollar we don't have to raise in taxes or a dollar we don't have to make in painful cuts.
Mr. Cross, Representative Cross, you have 1 minute.
3 times, Mike, you were quoted in papers, the Daily Herald, one time the GN, WGN, and WDS, where you were critical of the current treasurer for his overseas investments. 6 months you were going down the road that we shouldn't have overseas investments. So you either didn't understand the office that we had overseas investments or you weren't for Israeli bonds. You can't have it both ways. The reality is the Israeli bonds have been a very good investment. We should continue them. I happen to think we ought to double the investment. We have $25 million in Israeli bonds. I'd put it up to 50. Other states are doing that. It's been a very, very sound investment. You've also said over the past 6 months that we ought to invest in Illinois companies. As a treasurer, we don't have the ability, nor does the law allow us to invest in Illinois companies, for instance, buying stocks. I'm all for making sure we do more in Illinois, but the treasurer is limited in what he or she can invest in, and you have not, to this point, demonstrated an understanding of that issue at all.
Well, since we set the precedent, you could respond, and then you could respond. Go ahead.
Tom talks an awful lot about the investments that the treasurer has a direct role in. But the treasurer also has a seat on the board of the Illinois State Board of Investment. And Tom, if you look at those investments, we have plenty of overseas investments. And we invest in lots of Illinois companies. But I think if we can help our Illinois companies, that we can grow jobs here in the state. One of the things we've talked about doing is doing greater marketing with Ag Invest and making it focused on eco-ag. Farmers have gone through great transitions, and companies like John Deere and Caterpillar are making a transition to more green technologies. But those transition costs can be very high. If we can help our farmers to make that transition, it helps their bottom line when they're spending less on fuel and spending less on fertilizer. It helps our companies here in Illinois, like John Deere and Caterpillar, when they were buying their equipment. And it helps our environment. That's a way that we can spend more time focused on the duties of the Treasurer's Office, focus on our investments as the Chief Investment Officer, and not as the Prosecutor-in-Chief.
Well, and Mike, to Dan Rutherford's credit, who you've been highly critical of, you've proposed an idea of an eco-friendly treasurer's office, which makes sense and is a good idea, but Dan does all of those already. Illinois First has not been utilized this much, Ag Invest has not been utilized because interest rates are low. The idea of Ag Invest is to infuse money into local banks, make sure they can then loan it out to farmers. They haven't needed to do that because interest rates are so low. But Mike, you've yet to stay on the issue of being very critical of Dan, of his investments overseas. You either, and you haven't explained this, you either didn't understand we had overseas investments or you weren't for Israeli bond investments. And I think there's a clear distinction there, and you have not explained that to anybody yet. And the paper and the media has been very clear that you said no overseas investment, we shouldn't do it.
That is not true. It's just not true. I've never said no overseas investments. I've been critical about a focus on too much on overseas investments as the expense here in Illinois. But I've said we need to invest in Israel bonds. So let me make that very clear. You've taken my words and manipulated them in a way.
I guess WGN Radio, I manipulated their words in the Daily Herald.
Well, WGN Radio manipulates my words every week, so what the hell?
Well, sometimes with good reason.
Okay. All right. Moving along in a little more genteel mode, though I personally like the current mode the best. I mean, this is a debate.
It makes more interesting television.
Well, I don't care about. I care about these guys here. Here we go. Representative Cross, this is going to be a Paul Green question. Who in Illinois political history, past or present, is your political hero?
I had a high school history teacher by the name of Denny Hastert. And he has been a hero for me really for one reason, not because of the reasons you may think. He made a deal with me when I ran for office that he would never tell anybody my grades. And so he's never done that, and I think Denny Hastert is a great American.
Well, okay. That wasn't the direction I thought it would go.
Do I get some extra seconds for keeping that short?
Yeah, on account. Okay, Mr. Senator Frerichs, who is your political hero? And as a graduate of the University of Illinois undergraduate school, please don't name any football coach. But go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. I think that might be the softest of softball questions ever asked. As a tall, lanky politician from central Illinois, I don't think you can answer anything but Abraham Lincoln, for reasons everyone here knows. He showed great strength in keeping this country together in some of its toughest times. I think we look today at some of the gridlock in Washington, D.C., and say, how could it be any worse? But if we look back to the fortitude shown, the leadership shown by Abraham Lincoln, it should give us all faith and hope that we are able to produce leaders like that. We're able to bring this country together when we were far more divided than we are today.
Well, okay, that shows you that there is hope for ending polarization. A Democrat picking a Republican. There you go. By the way,
I'm not sure he'd be Republican today if he came back.
Okay, we're back. We're back fighting the gladiator battle again. Okay.
I think I probably disagree with that because he actually was for balanced budgets, Mike.
Okay. Hey, City Club, cheap shots. There's no such thing as a low blow here. Remember, our rules are simple. You wear your trunks around your ankles. No low blows. Marcus of Queensberry never stepped foot in Illinois. All right. For you, Senator Frerichs. Got us. I thought that'd be a great question. I was called a softball, huh? All you students, you be quiet. Okay. One of the issues that has been bantered around for a long time, those of us who've been in this state for a long time know that the history of some of the people who served in Springfield, several of them have, shall we say, had another term at federal expense. to question whether or not the treasurer's office and the comptroller's office, sorry, Sheila, that you're running for, should be combined. I believe the current comptroller has talked about it, even when she was state treasurer. The question is, should we consolidate not only the treasurer's office and the comptroller's office and eliminate it as an elected office along with the Secretary of State and Treasurer, Secretary, and Lieutenant Governor? Should we just have 2 elected state officials, Governor and Attorney General, because that's where the policy is made? What's your view on that?
Sure. My view is we can merge the 2 offices. I supported that. I supported it in the Senate. It passed out of the Senate. It didn't get passed out of the House. There's been a lot of discussion since then about how do we get this done. And I think the earliest we're able to change our Constitution is not for another 4 years. So we can sit around and we can debate, and we can have lots of discussion, or we can work together to start saving money today. I know that Sheila Simon has talked about the need to work with intergovernmental agreements to find duplication of services between the Treasurer's office and the Comptroller's office. And I'm committed to working with our next Comptroller to find those redundancies and to eliminate them. We can work together to do this. If we do want to shrink the size of state government, though, if we want to spend less, then we can't be proposing expansions of the duties of the Treasurer. We can't be hiring a whole new set of lawyers to come in and do the job of the Attorney General. We can't be issuing new financial reports that are already issued quarterly and monthly by the Comptroller's office. What I want to do as the next state treasurer is focus on the current responsibilities of the state treasurer. Sure, suing people would get me a lot more attention than making smart investments. But that's the job. And if we focus laser-like on our responsibilities and not on increasing our responsibilities and growing the size of the treasurer's office, we can help the state move forward.
You've got to combine the offices. It sends a message to the state of Illinois and taxpayers that you can combine offices, consolidate, and life goes on. It saves us $12 million. But if you're going to be advocating for that, you have to be very clear and very strong and unwavering in your position that you are for consolidating offices. Mike, you haven't been that way. You were on a BBM channel where you said, I'm not so sure we need to do it. Think about Dixon. Your own newspaper says Frerichs clearly doesn't know what he really thinks, and when candidates don't know what they believe, they say whatever seems convenient at the moment. You have to combine the offices. It's critical. And there's one reason we haven't done this is because the Speaker doesn't want it. When I'm treasurer, we're going to be very clear about it. We'll do a feasibility study so we can say to the Speaker, this is why it makes sense. These are the savings. These are the safeguards. And you need to be a champion for advocating for combining the offices. You can't be beating around the bush. You can't nibble around the edges. You have to say, this is important, and we have to do it. And we have been that way, and will continue to be that way.
You want to? Okay.
I've been clear. I believe we need to merge the offices. The only thing you've taken is statement saying we need to do it right. No. You need to make sure there are internal controls in place. You need to make sure that you have proper oversight. But as the only candidate in this race who has actually experience managing a financial office and being a certified public finance officer, I know you've been dismissive of that, but the only candidate who has the training to do this, I said we need to make sure we do it right. And if we do it right, we can have savings, and it's something I'll support. I've been clear about that.
If we're going to open up the can of worms, Mike, of your experience, let's talk about Champaign County, where you were the auditor.
I'm sure they'll ask these questions.
Well, why don't we just make sure we talk about it right now? So when Mike Frerichs was the auditor, there was an opportunity before the county board as to whether or not they should do an early retirement initiative for the county board. County board came to the auditor, who also happened to be the representative of the IMRF program in Champaign County. Mike was, as the auditor. He had 2 roles. They said, should we do as a county an early retirement initiative? Does it make sense? Will you analyze it and come back to the board and let us know whether we should do an early retirement initiative? Use your experience, use your financial acumen, and tell us whether it makes financial sense. He came back to the finance committee, said, we should do it, you should do it, it'll save us $120,000. They did it. Within a couple years, they found out it cost them $2.5 million. They had to sell bonds, and it cost them $3 million at the end of the day. He made the analysis, he made the recommendation, he said there were savings, it cost him $3 million. He was then ultimately removed as the IMRF representative for Champaign County. If you're going to run on experience and the financial background, you have to talk about the opportunity or the times where you have had an opportunity, to show your skills. And in Champaign County, Mike, you blew it.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Mr. You obviously have
Sure.
take as long as you
Paul.
like.
I'm not sure where to begin. I will tell you again. I'm the only certified public finance officer in this race. As Champaign County auditor, we came in and we went after wasteful spending. Every year I was in office, we were awarded a Certificate for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association. The Government Finance Officers Association is the largest independent group of government finance professionals in the state. And what you've just said, Tom, is not true. And you don't have to take my word for it. The county administrator, Deborah Busey, a Republican, told the News Gazette, I brought the ERI proposal to the county auditor and the county board, not Mike Frerichs. It's just not true, what you're saying. You're making this up.
Mike,
No,
Mike.
no,
wait,
let me finish here.
Let him
It's just,
finish.
Yeah, you're right.
it is
Let him finish.
not true. What I did is I told the county board, if you offer an early retirement incentive and you rehire everyone at the same salaries, of course you are going to lose money. If you don't hire anyone, if you don't refill any positions, you're going to save money. The county auditor is not in charge of hiring and firing people in Champaign County. You've just tried to create an issue. It's the same thing you did with Bob Grogan when you attacked his record of being county auditor, trying to distract people. Once again, I'm the only person in this race who has experience in the office, and my experience has been of cutting waste in Springfield and excellence in financial reporting. I'll put that up against your record as a prosecutor any day.
Well, Mike, $3 million. Let me ask you this. Is it true that the Champaign County Board had to sell bonds to cover the loss of the ERI initiative?
The county,
answer is yes.
The county reduced their savings. Tom, I would ask you, did
$3
the
million.
state, when you voted for an early retirement incentive for the state under George Ryan, that cost the state billions of dollars, did it not cost the state billions of dollars, Tom?
Mike,
if
the-
we're wanting yes and no answers,
Okay, you're both,
you can give me
asking questions
the answer is
instead of
yes.
answering. Okay, let's move on. Obviously, we're not going to get an agreement on this. We can't even get an agreement on the question, let alone the answer.
The county administrator has agreement on
Okay.
this.
I'll tell you one thing, though, but when you talk to a local newspaper, you better make sure the other guy is not going to read it, because Oswego and Champaign, this is it.
You got to
Boy,
read it.
I'm sure Bruce Stoll at the Tribune's really excited. All right. Listen, I have the last question, and I think we'll skip the audience questions because this is too good to throw it open. Unless someone has a burning question, raise your hand. City Club A, why don't you go back there and see if it's not a sandbag? Right back there. Here's my last question, and I'm going to give each of you 90 seconds to what's the time frame in this debate, right, Martha? It makes a difference. Both of you, I think we start off with Mr. Cross. Both of you are members of the General Assembly. Given the state's fiscal depths, how does your legislative record suggest that you would make an outstanding state treasurer based on your legislative record? Mr. Frerichs, you're first.
Well, I've
No,
only,
excuse me, Mr. Cross, you're first.
Okay.
Look,
I'm a little nervous here.
the treasurer has basic responsibilities. We've talked a little bit about them, not a lot. Invest the money, oversee the Bright Start program, and also implement the iCash program. And there are other things like Ag Invest, as Mike talked about. But look, if we had $5 billion in a rainy day fund and we were in great shape on all the other issues, you'd say that's all we do. But the reality is we're not. We're in tough times. And we've got to find ways to turn this state around. The Treasurer's Office can be part of that. The issues of the day involve the budget. The issues of the day involve unemployment. The issues of the day involve the business climate. The issues of the day involve Medicaid. The issues of the day involve pensions. We have been very, very active on pension reform. I introduced one of the first bills, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, but we have to have a discussion continuously in this state, regardless of what the court does about fixing pensions. We're going to spend $8.5 billion out of a $35 billion budget this year. We can't go on. We've got to continue to talk about how we reform Medicaid. If we don't improve the business climate in this state, we're never going to turn this state around. I have a very strong record on Medicaid reform, involved in the legislation, business reform, pension reform, and being involved in cutting budgets and also introducing balanced budgets. So those are the things, and you can use this office to engage in all of those issues of the day.
90 seconds, Mr. Frerichs.
Number one thing we need to do in the Treasurer's Office is come in and reform this office. On day one, we'll conduct an audit to help drive out the inefficiencies and the politics that's played too large of a role in this office. So then we can get focused on our primary responsibility, which is investing the state's assets and investing the assets of children whose parents are saving for college education. And what has my experience in Springfield been about? I have served on the Financial Institutions Committee. I served on the Pension Investments Committee. I'm the co-chair of the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability. That, in addition to my experience as being a county auditor and a CPFO, I think gives me the experience to come in and make those investments. One of the things we need to be aware of, though, is we've had issues with our college savings plans in the past. Higher education is so very important to me. It has been transformative in my life and opening up opportunities for a kid from Gifford, Illinois, population 800, had no idea were available. And they shouldn't just be available to kids who get lucky or for kids from affluent neighborhoods. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to grow parents' assets so that they can save for their kids' education. I've been very critical of the treasurer, of the current treasurer, for just giving an extension to Oppenheimer funds, a company that is under SEC investigation, a company that lost $150 million for families in this state. My opponent has been complimentary of the job Dan Rutherford has done in his investments. I think we can do much better. I served as the chairman of the Senate Higher Education Committee. College affordability is one of the greatest issues of this day. We could go into it for a long time. We held a series of hearings around the state to try and address this. As state treasurer, I'll put that contract back out for bid. So we have a more responsible manager, and we can help drive down fees for families who are saving for their kids' future to give them greater opportunity.
Okay, good answer, and that was one of the best questions. You just, Kimberly, where are you, Kimberly? Raise your hand. I've tried to pronounce your name. Ego when? Okay, that was you asked a very good question. He answered it without even seeing the question. Mr. Cross, I'll give you an extra 30 seconds so we can move this along. My question is, what is in your legislative record suggests you make an outstanding state treasurer? And also, would you respond to what Kimberly and what your opponent was talking about? That is the College Illinois program. So you have two things.
Sure. So I have a very healthy understanding of college, as we have two children in college right now. And Mike and I agree. I think college, the cost of college is a national issue. I think it's a real problem. It's very, very scary for this country. The amount of debt we're going to see the kids have and will have is, I think, one of the next big financial issues of this country, and it is a real, real problem. When in the treasurer's office, there are a couple things on Bright Start we can improve. And to Dan Rutherford's credit, and it's easy to criticize him, and on some things I get it. But Bright Start is, I think, you have about 100,000 more participants, and assets have increased by 50% just in the last few years. But when we do go back to bid, we need to make sure it's open and it's transparent, and we will do that if we're elected. The second thing is, I think we need to, instead of doing the annual audits, we need to do a quarterly audit on the Bright Start program. We need to have a separate investment committee on in Bright Start and make sure it is that we are on top of Bright Start. I mean, it is, and maybe, Mike, this is some area where we do agree. We need to make sure that people's investment in their kids' education is safeguarded, and I completely agree with that. I think when I think about another thing that the treasurer's office can do, and I'm not sure where you do this, and I kind of say it in jest, but you almost feel like you need to be at the hospital with the family saying, start saving when you leave here today, because of the cost of college. It is so bad, and I think we can do a little better marketing about the advantages of Bright Start. We also have Bright Direction. But the program has turned around, and again, I think Dan has done a good job on Bright Start in turning around. I applaud him on that, but there's clearly things we can do to improve it.
I guess I couldn't disagree more that they've done a good job with Oppenheimer. Losing $150 million, pushing families. They're pushing families into subprime mortgage packages. At the same time, they're selling their own interest. And yet we only recovered 50 cents on the dollar there. You know, this is a company that's under SEC investigation. We had the opportunity. Their contract was up this year. I called on the treasurer to put it out for bid. That's one of the things I will do. I'll be clear about that. We'll put it out for bid. I believe in the free market. I believe that if we use competition, we can lower costs. We can help families. You know, that's something I think that I pledge to do.
I guess I was trying to think maybe there was some common ground between the two of us.
All right.
And I said, you know, why don't we all work on college education? The reality is, Mike, the facts speak for themselves. 100,000 new people, 50% improvement in assets. That's a good direction. Do we agree that we need to make some change on Oppenheimer if either one of us win? I think the contract comes up in 2017. I think we agree on that as well. Okay. We definitely do.
Okay, this will be the last question. We have a few sandbags here. And seldom do you have a question, the last question in the debate, from a person who's running for office. Okay. But this is the City Club where what rules? This is from Sheila Simon, Lieutenant Governor. This is to both of you. We'll give you 60 seconds, or what the heck, 90 seconds each. Hey, if the state can have a balanced budget by law and be $100 billion in debt, we can cheat on 30 seconds. Come on. Will you be active? This is for both of you. Will you be active members of the Illinois State Board of Investment? Should members attend more than half of the board and committee meetings. Ooh, a little jabberoo out there, Sheila. All right. I'll repeat it without editorial comment. Will you be as an active member of the Illinois State Board of Investment, and should members attend more than half of the board and committee meetings? Mr. Cross, we'll start with you, and then Mr. Frerichs, you will respond.
Oh, definitely. The answer is yes. Look, the State Board of Investments is in charge of SERS, judges and GARs, and all of those systems are in bad shape right now. We haven't really talked about pensions. It's not that much in the purview of the Treasurer's Office other than this role on the State Board of Investments. So you need to be there. You need to be cognizant of what their investment policy is, what their investment strategy is, and making sure that you have a strong and continuous strong portfolio. But the bottom line is yes, by all means.
Mr. Frerichs?
Yeah, very simple. I think we have found some agreement here. I think we do need to have our treasurer engaged here. I think in the past, that's not been the case. That's something I'm committed to because there is so much at stake here. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in assets that the state manages. And although the treasurer doesn't get to make those decisions themselves, we need someone who's going to go and ask difficult questions and not just be a rubber stamp.
Okay. Since it's been such a harmonious debate, and which I prefer, we now come to the end. Make sure we have our people come in with for the drawing, and of course the very, very highly desirable parting gifts that we give out here that are, I don't think you'll have to worry about filing any kind of form on them, but nevertheless, 2 minutes each, starting with Mr. Frerichs. Closing statement.
Thank you very much.
Well, let me read it so people know what you're going to do. Well, maybe what you're supposed to do, both of you. Why would I be a better state treasurer than my opponent? I don't know if you could fill it up in 2 minutes, but give your best shot.
Well, thank
Frerichs?
you very much. I will try. I think I've communicated some of this. Once again, I'll repeat that I'm the only candidate in this race who has experience working in a government finance office. I was a Champaign County auditor where I received several awards for my service and received a designation as a certified public finance officer. I think what we need to do is we need to bring experience to this office, we need to bring integrity, and we need to focus on our mission of investing. We need to come in and bring experience that I've just talked about. And the integrity is we need to release the taxpayer-funded investigation of the Treasurer's Office that Treasurer Rutherford said he would release and has not yet. We need to come in and conduct an audit on day one to make sure we're spending our money wisely and we're not using it for partisan political purposes. Then we need to make sure we have a strong Inspector General in the Treasurer's Office. Once we've made those reforms, we can work on greater investments here in this state, whether it be investments in technology development accounts that help grow high-tech and biomed businesses in this state, here in this state, not in Texas, not in California, grow them here, or whether it be working to refine existing programs, make sure they're doing a better job. My opponent said that all those things that Treasurer Rutherford is doing with Ag Invest has already been done. That's not true. We want to focus more laser-like. And if you say that interest rates are low, I can tell you just look at various heads of the Fed. The head of the Fed and the president in St. Louis said that interest rates are expected to go up in the first quarter of next year. I believe over the next 4 years, we're going to see interest rates rise, and I want to use those linked deposits to help our small businesses and our entrepreneurs in this state. That's my experience. That's my plan. That's what I'll do as our next state treasurer. Thank you all very much for being here today.
Round of applause.
We've talked.
2 minutes.
We've articulated a vision for the office. One, we want to insist that the budget is balanced. We cannot go on with unbalanced budgets. We're going to insist on that. Again, the goal is not to file a lawsuit. The goal is to have a balanced budget so we can climb out of this hole. Second, we've articulated a plan to create a government integrity unit to take on fraud and corruption. This was a state that was charged with an SEC violation, a criminal SEC charge a couple years ago, as we were lying about the financial condition of our state a few years ago when Governor Blagojevich was going to bond houses. This is a state where you can be a substitute teacher for a day and get a pension for life. That's unacceptable. Third, we want to be a lot more transparent on what we provide you, the public, and the media about the financial condition of the state. A company does it on an annual basis. We want to do it a quarterly basis. We've got a report card, has 28 data points that will lay out the financial condition of the state. Comptroller does 3 or 4 of those things, and she should by law, but we want to do more than that so people know what the financial condition of the state. If we're going to turn it around, we have to have an honest conversation about the true financial condition of the state and having a willingness to take these on. Mike, you have been very vocal about your experience and your background. The experience in Champaign County was a disaster on ERI. You were involved in a patronage scandal where two of your closest allies, your campaign manager and another friend, got jobs and were reprimanded in a big, big way, much to the chagrin of Champaign County. And we even found out a couple weeks ago you didn't pay your real estate taxes in your campaign office. You can't keep doing this stuff. So if you're going to have experience and talk about it, then you have to be honest about your background and your experience.
How
I
about
guess
a,
we saved our cheapest shots for last.
Mike,
about a
Mike,
round-
wait a minute. Did you not pay your campaign office taxes? Did you,
Tom,
campaign taxes?
You have seen, one, they are paid.
Did you pay it? No,
Two,
no.
Do
Did you
you
pay
seen
it?
the report from the Department of Revenue? It says the state of Illinois does not owe property taxes, Tom.
On your
The great
campaign
issue,
office.
You've never
Your
paid
campaign
property
office.
taxes on your campaign office, on your
Wait, wait, wait.
property
Did you
district
pay-
office
did
either.
you not pay your
Yes,
campaign
we have-
office's
we have-
taxes
we
for
have-
2
we have-
years?
We have paid our taxes. They're
For
all
2
paid
years,
up.
you were 2 years late.
And
Okay,
Tom,
okay.
and Tom, you were late on your property tax, personal property tax as well.
Gentlemen.
That's not the responsibility of the treasurer's
Okay,
office.
okay,
Let's
gentlemen.
talk about the real issues.
Boy, you know, Speaker Manning got a tougher job than I thought. Oh. How about a round of applause for Mr. Cross and a round of applause for both